Imagine looking out your window one morning and seeing a Northern Cardinal sitting on your fence. Bright red feathers, black mask, that unmistakable song. But then you notice something strange. There's another cardinal nearby, not far away, not randomly passing through. A quieter, reddish-brown bird is sitting in the bushes, watching. You see them again tomorrow, and the next day. Sometimes they're feeding in the same yard. Sometimes they're moving through the trees together. Sometimes one calls, and the other answers. So you start wondering, are these two birds actually a couple? The answer is more fascinating than you might expect, because behind that familiar backyard scene is a complicated relationship involving territory, communication, breeding, survival, and a bond that can last through the seasons. And once you understand what these two cardinals are actually doing, you may never look at a pair of cardinals the same way again. Northern cardinals are one of the most recognizable birds in North America. The male is impossible to miss. Brilliant red plumage, a pointed crest, a dark mask around the face. The female looks completely different. She is mostly warm brown with reddish tones in the wings, crest, and tail. And this difference can make their relationship easy to overlook. You might think you're seeing two unrelated birds sharing the same backyard, but often there's a reason they're there together. Northern cardinals form pair bonds, and pairs may remain together through the year. That means the two birds appearing around your feeder aren't necessarily strangers that happen to meet at the same place. They may be partners sharing a territory. And here's where the story gets interesting. Because their relationship isn't simply about staying close. They have to communicate. They have to defend their territory. They have to find food. And during breeding season, they have to work together to raise the next generation. So, when you see two cardinals moving through your yard, you're potentially watching a partnership in action. But how do they actually coordinate with each other? That leads to one of the most fascinating parts of their behavior. A male cardinal begins singing from a high branch. Clear notes travel across the neighborhood. Then, another sound comes from somewhere nearby. A response. Cardinals don't simply make noise at random. Their calls and songs are part of a communication system used in different situations, and females can sing too. That's something many people never realize. In fact, female Northern Cardinals are among the relatively small number of North American female songbirds known for singing. Their songs can help coordinate interactions between members of a pair. Imagine sitting quietly in your backyard. You hear one cardinal singing, then another responds from the shrubs to you. It might sound like a beautiful little conversation. To the birds, that communication can carry important information. Where are you? Where am I? Is the territory safe? Is another bird nearby? And during breeding season, communication becomes even more important. Because now the pair isn't simply sharing space. They're preparing for something much bigger. A nest, eggs, and eventually chicks. Here's something easy to misunderstand about a cardinal pair. If you see them repeatedly in your backyard, they may not simply be visiting because your bird feeder has good food. They may be defending a territory. Northern cardinals are territorial, particularly during the breeding season. And this is where that famous red cardinal behavior can become surprisingly intense. A male may chase another male away. He may sing from prominent branches, and sometimes a cardinal sees an intruder that isn't actually there. His own reflection, a window, a mirror, a shiny surface. Suddenly, the bird may interpret the reflection as another cardinal entering its territory. And instead of flying away, It may repeatedly confront the rival, but the real territorial battle is happening outside the glass. The pair has a space to defend: food, resources, shelter, nesting areas, and the possibility of raising young. So when you see the same two cardinals repeatedly returning to the same neighborhood, you're not necessarily watching two birds that simply like the same feeder. You may be looking at two birds protecting a home range they know extremely well. But there's another question. If they're working together, how does that partnership actually help them survive? When breeding season arrives, the relationship becomes even more important. The female chooses a nesting site and builds the nest, usually in dense vegetation, such as shrubs or vines. The male remains closely involved. He can help defend the territory, while the female handles much of the nesting work. And this is where the pair's communication matters. A cardinal nest isn't a fortress. It's vulnerable. The eggs are vulnerable. The chicks are vulnerable. So protecting the surrounding territory becomes essential. The male may spend time watching from nearby branches. The female stays closer to the nest, and the two birds continue communicating. Eventually, eggs hatch, tiny chicks appear, and suddenly, the pair has a completely different responsibility: finding food, feeding young, protecting the nesting area, and keeping predators away. For the birds, this isn't a romantic story, it's survival. Every successful nesting attempt represents another generation, and that makes the bond between the two adults much more important than it first appears. Now imagine something. You see the male cardinal at your feeder. Later, you see the female beneath the same tree. The following morning, both are there again. It can feel almost like they're following each other. But there may be something simpler happening. They share a familiar territory. They know where food can be found. They know where cover is available. They know where danger may appear. And they know the landscape around them. Northern Cardinals don't migrate like many other familiar backyard birds. They generally remain year-round residents across much of their range. That means a pair doesn't have to disappear every autumn and start over somewhere else. They can remain in the same general area through winter. And that's one reason cardinals become such familiar neighbors. You aren't necessarily seeing a new pair every few months. You may be seeing the same individuals, repeatedly using the same territory. Season after season, they become part of the landscape. But winter brings another fascinating question. What happens to the pair when breeding season ends? Outside breeding season, the relationship can change. The intense territorial behavior of spring and summer isn't necessarily the same throughout the year. Cardinals may interact differently depending on season, food availability, and social conditions. And this is important because we sometimes turn animal behavior into human stories. We say, they're married. They're together forever. They never leave each other. But nature is rarely that simple. Northern Cardinals can form pair bonds, and many pairs remain together through the year. But that doesn't mean every pair behaves identically. Their behavior is shaped by territory, reproduction, food, competition, and survival. That's what makes them interesting. The pair isn't simply staying together because they are in love in the human sense. Their partnership has practical consequences. Two birds sharing a territory can coordinate activities. They can defend resources. They can reproduce. And when conditions are right, they can raise another generation. So the next time you see two cardinals together, there may be far more happening than you realize. And then comes the final mystery. Why does the female cardinal matter so much to this story? Think back to that first scene. You saw the bright red cardinal. He caught your attention immediately. But beside him was another bird, brown, quiet, much easier to overlook, the female. And that's perhaps the most interesting part of the entire story. The cardinal pair isn't just about the spectacular red bird everyone notices. It's about both birds. The male's brilliant appearance, the female's subtle colors, their songs, their calls, their territory, their nesting behavior. Together, they form a partnership that helps them navigate one of the most demanding parts of life in the wild. So the next time two cardinals appear outside your window, don't just look at the red one. Look into the branches nearby. There may be another bird watching, listening, responding, and staying close. Because what looks like two ordinary backyard birds may actually be a pair sharing a territory they've learned to survive in together. And perhaps that's the real mystery. Not why you keep seeing two cardinals, but how much of their hidden lives has been happening right outside your window without you ever noticing. Have you ever seen the same two cardinals repeatedly in your yard? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoy uncovering the hidden mysteries, remarkable true stories, and extraordinary science behind birds and wildlife, subscribe to Winged Mysteries, because sometimes the most fascinating stories in nature are happening quietly right outside your window.